Aloha, friend. So I am doing two little separate WAMAs that hopefully won't get too long. I do have the capacity to be long-winded, and I'm going to do my best not to be. The Grateful Sweat Challenge that I'm running, that will continue to run, every day we answer something we're grateful for about our bodies, and then we also think about the story that we're telling ourselves. And I asked for some WAMA topics, and one of the stories that a person who can remain anonymous was telling themselves is that the world is riddled with people that they feel so angry at, that they feel grumpy about that, and are feeling like they need to escape it. These days are hard. And then it later goes into reducing stress, but they can't imagine how they would do that. Like, they need to change their life, change the day-to-day way that they're living. I don't know if any of you are feeling similar, but if you are, I'm glad to answer all of those questions with more questions, because just like I think James Clear says that advice is so contextual that it oftentimes won't be the right advice, that well-placed questions often get you to the outcome for an individual. If most people can't imagine how you should do something, they either imagine how they could do something, or they imagine how they think you might want to. But anyway, the questions are much more useful. So the thing I'd ask first is the stuff that you're angry at. What value is on the other side of that? So if I get angry at loud music being played, then it typically means that on the other side of that I do value quiet. And if I get angry at, let's say, something having to do with greed, it means that I value giving or not being greedy, being frugal, whatever it may be. So on either side of everything that annoys you is a value that you treasure. And my advice is, if you come up against things that are making you mad, think about that value and then put more of that in the world. Like, if it is the way a politician is doing something, then this is one that's big with me, that's why it's on my mind, is that there's an anti-corruption act, and one of the things, and it's a bipartisan anti-corruption act that could very well be passed on the local levels first and then get bigger, and it would make a huge change in our government in the way that we hold our public service humans accountable, which we don't right now. They're not necessarily doing anything wrong because there's no rules to hold them accountable, which is crazy. Anyway, so every time I think about just going ballistic on either party's representative saying something stupid or doing something nefarious or terrible, I just think to myself, like, don't let that get you down. Think about what change you want to put in the world. So that's one thing I think about, how to strengthen that. Like, if you get really annoyed at public park services getting lower funding, then spread the word that they need more funding. Like, be a part of the change. If you have the funds, donate them. Don't just be upset about the thing. You have more power than you know, even though it never feels like it. It might take a while, it might be hard work, but it'll be worth it. So that's where I'm going with that, is find the value and then strengthen the value instead of letting the anti-value tear you down. The other question is, where are you finding the craziness? If you're coming to Twitter every day and finding it's hard not to curse, finding the just craziness that is a Twitter feed, maybe take some time off Twitter. It's not really that necessary. If you're addicted to the outrage machine, cut the outrage machine out. As you might or might not know, I'm getting off of traditional social media soon, and I'm going to be just in my mighty network with the gratitude crew. This is mainly because of the distractions it presents and my easily distractible nature. it's got less to do with outrage or anything like that. But I do see the algorithm trying to put things in front of me that I'm going to click on that might tick me off or might strengthen my my bubble, my echo chamber, and I'm just not down with it anymore. So if you're finding craziness somewhere, can you choose not to go to that place? It might be worth it. When it gets to day-to-day living design, part of my thought is, if it is the social media, don't sign into it first thing in the morning. Do anything else besides that. Like, if you want to start running, then have your running clothes folded on top of your running shoes. If you want to start doing yoga, the night before, roll out your yoga mat where you can just hop right on it, but don't get on your phone first thing. So it kind of sounds like some lifestyle design, which has got to be very intentional to make it harder to do the bad habit or the thing that's introducing crazier, and then making it easier to replace it with a good thing that could be helpful. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We can talk about it. But how is your day-to-day living design supporting the craziness and the stress? Could we replace getting onto Facebook with meditating? Just a thought. There was also some comments about not being able to breathe really well, and it is not in my scope of practice at all to diagnose anything, but I would just ask if there had been or has been any strong feelings of anxiousness or anxiety present when it's happening, because when I've had anxiety, it's got nothing to do with my breathing. It actually feels like I'm having a heart attack. It feels like somebody's stepping on my chest. But my breathing isn't limited, and my pulse ox is just fine. But I have had friends who have expressed that they have a really hard time breathing, panic attack type things. So it's just curious, is the breathing coming along with any other feelings? And another curious thing surrounding the breathing topic is, this sounds so silly, but whenever people say they have a hard time breathing, whether it's during exercise or steps or whatever, I ask, what to me now is a really obvious question, but is just so alien, and is that I ask if they practice breathing. I know, sounds crazy. I know, you just mind blown right there. But if we have a hard time breathing, and it's not because of any obstruction or any illness or any or anxiety or anything like that, if I focus on practicing on breathing, I find it to be quite useful. I've got a video on 4-7-8 breathing, which is taking a deep breath in for 4 seconds, holding for 7 seconds, and then breathing out for 8 seconds. 4-7-8, and then I would go right back into it. I find that's really useful for learning how to just hold that breath and be calm in that moment, and then breathe it out slowly as well. I don't think the timing matters. It could be 3, 6, 7 breathing. It could be, slightly shorter, slightly longer. It doesn't matter so much. I think it does matter that you count to yourself, and it's kind of weird numbers, because for me, if I've ever been doing my 4-7-8 breathing to calm down, the counting helps me calm down, because counting to 4 as a musician, easy as pie, but then counting to 7 is like, oh, this is weird, and then counting to 8 after you count to 7 is even crazier, and then you go back to 4. So I think that might have something to do with it, why it works. So I hope this was very useful. You can either answer the question, send me a message, or if you're not the person who asked these questions in the first place, tell me if these return questions served you at all. I like to help, and if you ask more, I might be able to send you back the questions that help you clarify your situation a little bit more. Thanks, friend.